Welcome to Christian Warrior Training. Today we're going to talk about a man that went into St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican and urinated into the altar of confession. I can't show the whole video here, but if you want to see the unredacted video of what occurred, which is good for training, it's over at christianwarriortraining.com, where I have freedom of speech. I can show whatever I want and not really worry about censorship. So head on over there, christianwarriortraining.com. I put up way much more information over there than I do on YouTube. I only have 56,000 subscribers on the email list over there, but 205,000 people subscribing over here. So you're better off over on the other side. So just my 2 cents. All right, let's go over what happened. And with every incident that we talk about here at Christian Warrior Training is we break down what happened to all the nitty gritty details. And then we talk about what you can do as a church if you have something similar. And there have been multiple incidents in America of people urinating in the holy water at specific churches here in the United States. I've had multiple of those that I've reported on each Saturday, where I report all the crime that occurred the previous week. So we need to talk about what we're going to do when that happens. And then we always have a little Bible study at the end where we talk about the Bible and just kind of reflect on what we just talked about and what does the Bible say? Because everything that we should do should be grounded in the Bible. If you're not a Christian, you're still welcome here. I welcome everybody to come here. I hope that you turn to Christ at some point. But if you don't, that's okay. You're still welcome here. You're made in God's image. I'm not going to turn you away. I want to make sure that you're protected. Let's talk about the incident. This happened 2 days ago, October 11th, where a man walked up to the altar of confession inside of St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican. Now, witnesses reported that he climbed onto the altar and began urinating in front of hundreds of visitors before he was detained by plainclothes police officers stationed inside. Now, again, you can see the unredacted video over at christianwarriortraining.com. But still listen to this breakdown, though. It's important. I am not Catholic, and I had to look up kind of the traditions here so I could understand. Now, for those of you that are like me, that are unfamiliar with that Catholic tradition, the altar of confession is the central altar of St. Peter's Basilica. It's located directly above what is believed to be the tomb of the Apostle Peter, which makes this all so much worse knowing that. Now, it's not an altar for confession in the modern sense, but it's called that because of the early Christian custom of confessing faith at Peter's tomb. Now, it is the most sacred spot in the Basilica, and it's used by the Pope himself for Mass. Now, this isn't the first time that somebody's desecrated this site. Now, earlier in the year, another man climbed onto the altar, and he threw several candles down to the ground. Now, in 2023, a Polish man stripped naked on the altar with a "Save Children of Ukraine" written across his back. Now, this is another example of hostility that has been growing towards Christians all over the world. And for those of you that have churches that might be in the forefront of the fight to protect Christianity, whether your pastor speaks out or speaks the truth, or just brings any kind of attention to it, or you have a historical site at your church or something like that, you should know that people are going to want to come do outrageous things to draw attention to whatever it is that they want to do. But know that these attacks are growing. Like I mentioned, in the United States, I've mentioned several times, mainly in the New York City area, where people have urinated into the holy water of specific Catholic churches, again, in the New York City area. Now, what are you going to do if somebody does some kind of act of desecration at your church? What are you going to do, and how are you going to respond to that? First and foremost, you have to be calm and controlled. Now, inside, I'm raging. What he did was just so disrespectful, but you have to control that rage, and you have to be calm and controlled when you go up to go deal with that person. How you react in those first few moments is going to determine whether this ends quietly or it turns chaotic. And then everybody's going to be recording it. And what is that recording going to look like? Are you going to represent Christians well, or are you going to be the reason that we have a debrief? The guys that handle it here, they did fine. They're not the reason for the debrief. It's the man's behavior, but I think you get where I'm going. Number one thing, stop the behavior safely. You want to approach them with confidence, not with aggression. If they're still in the act, you want to give a clear verbal command to stop. I recommend that you also tell them that you are trespassing, you are being trespassed, leave immediately. And you're just laying a baseline for a crime if there's already not a crime being committed. And I know you can say like, oh, well, it's illegal to urinate in a church. Show me the law that says that. Because some of you live in areas where there's no law that says that. And one of the things that I always tell people that were behaving badly, they'll say, what's the law that I break? And I would always tell them, well, let me put it very succinctly for you. It's not illegal to pee in an elevator, but we all know we're not supposed to do it. And so here, if you can't point to a specific crime, you want to start laying the groundwork for one that you know you will have, which is trespassing. Even though it's public and people can come into the public, you can still ban people from your church. And this is why you have to give security personnel down to the lowest level the authority to trespass people from your church. And if you are that security officer that has that authority, you don't want to abuse it either. But here you have somebody peeing, desecrating, doing something else, and you should just be able to come up and just say, hey, you're being trespassed. Stop immediately. You've been trespassed. Leave now. If you don't, you're trespassing, and when they refuse, you're trespassing. I told you to leave. And then that way, if you have to use force, you kind of have a crime that you laid down below that, because pretty much, I think every state has trespassing. Even California, their trespassing law is very weak, but it would be enough to try and cover you if something happened down the road somewhere. You want to try to avoid physical contact unless you have no choice to prevent further damage or danger. Now, in most cases, the offender is going to be intoxicated, mentally unstable, or seeking attention. De-escalation should be that priority. I recommend you take my use of force course. If you head over to christianwarriortraining.com, hit the training tab at the top, that will take you to our training site. Find the use of force class. If you take that, it is free. It's my gift to you as a fellow follower of Christ. If you want to support my mission and what I'm doing, then do a paid subscription, and that helps me run Christian Warrior Training and give it for free to the people that can't afford it. My whole goal when I started this was to provide that free training. It does cost money to keep this running, and that supports what we're doing here. All right. Thing number 2 that you're going to do, notify law enforcement, obviously, right? You want to have law enforcement being called as you're dealing with them. So you want to have that one designated person. You can call them on the radio and say, hey, I need you to call 911. This is what we have. We're talking to them now, just to get the cops rolling. The other thing you want to do is protect evidence. Now, it depends on what they're doing. If they peed, look, man, the cops aren't going to collect the pee for evidence. Okay, we might take a picture of it to show, yeah, look, there's urine right here, and then you guys can clean it up later. But if there was like a vandalism or something like that, a lot of people are going to want to go up and clean it up right away, because it's visually disturbing to see that is desecrated like that. And you just need to make sure everybody stays back and make sure that before it gets cleaned up, we get our pictures taken and everything else that we need to do. So protect that evidence. Fourth thing coming up, restoration and cleansing. So after the investigation, you're going to work with church leadership to restore the area properly. So that could include both physical cleaning and a prayer of rededication or some type of blessing. So the goal is to acknowledge what happened, but you're going to restore the sanctuary's purpose as a place of worship and a place of peace. And then number 5, every incident that you have like this, you're going to do an after action report. You're obviously going to document the incident. You're going to write on paper a report about what occurred. You can get a free class on report writing over at christianwarriortraining.com. Again, my gift to you. But you're also going to do an after action report to talk about what went right, what went wrong, what you have to work on. Where did we fail that this guy got up there and started peeing? Like, think about it. He went up there, dropped his drawers, and was in the middle of urinating before he was contacted. What can we do as a group to make sure that we stop him? And I got to tell you right now, I've told my people, I tell you guys, imagine there's a force field around the stage. Anybody that goes up there, bad things are going to happen if they're not one of the authorized people to go on there. And so for us, the minute a person steps foot on that stage, we're running to stop them, to get them off. And usually it's going to be they put a foot on the stage, they're immediately coming off. And so you want to have that after action review to think about, where were we placed? Where were our people at? How could we have responded quicker? That was a really delayed response to be able to drop your drawers and pee like that for a while before somebody contacts you. Just my 2 cents. Now, the biblical perspective. Now, scripture's clear that the presence of evil in the world should not surprise us. Now, from the fall in Genesis to the end times described in Revelation, God warns that sin and rebellion will grow as people turn away from him. And what we're seeing in churches today is part of that reality. In Ezekiel 8, the prophet is shown a vision of people committing abominations inside the temple itself. They brought idols into the very place where God was to be worshiped. Now, the lesson is simple. Evil can reach even into sacred places when hearts grow cold and people lose reverence for the Lord. Now, Paul wrote in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 5, in the last days, there will come times of difficulty, describing people as lovers of self, proud, and without love for what is good. When someone desecrates an altar or mocks worship, they're living proof of those verses. In fact, we see those verses playing out every day when we watch TV. For the church, the response has to be twofold. First, you have to stay spiritually grounded. Evil acts in the sanctuary are not only physical acts, but spiritual ones meant to discourage and divide. Prayer, unity, and steadfast faith are the best defenses. Now, second, maintain vigilance. Being prepared is not a lack of faith. It's an obedience to God's call to be wise as stewards. Now, we can't stop all evil from coming to the church, but we can control how we respond to it. The presence of darkness only highlights the need for the light of Christ to shine brighter. As John 1:5 reminds us, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. I want you to pray for the man that was urinating on the altar. That's going to be hard for you to do, but we have to pray that he repents for his sins and he turns to Christ. And we want to pray for the officers and the security people that have to watch these areas. We pray for their safety and that they can stop people before they do something so heinous. The other thing I want you to remember, if you're in the United States, I want you to remember your ABCs. Always be caring.